An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? You're stupid minds! Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 104. I'm Aaron Pollier.
And I'm Darlene.
And we found a good one.
It's a horror.
And I say it's not, it's a science fiction. But we're going to continue to have this disagreement because I make the argument that horror and science fiction are basically the same thing from 1930 onwards. Up until the late 60s, and then it starts to divide because you start getting into the horror films that are like slasher movies or mass murdering movies, or really crazy like supernatural murdering things. Yeah, that's more horror. You get this dividing line, especially in the 1980s. It's still sort of close in the 70s, but in the 80s,
the science of this movie is the
well, we haven't even talked about what movie it is yet. I was just saying that we had this disagreement. You think it's horror. I say it's very clearly science fiction because what we're doing is The Two Faces of Dr. Jeckyl from 1960. It's a Hammer horror film. So it's about a man who concocts a chemical that frees his inner inhibitions and transforms him, i.e., it is science fiction. And I don't know if I can even make a weaker argument than that exact description. It is science fiction.
And for everybody that knows, the novel was Strange Case of Dr. Jeckyl and Mr. Hyde. And you know it was by Robert Louis Stevenson.
A very good story.
Yes.
Very good. And it's been adapted a million times.
And this movie is 88 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's done in 1960. In North America, it was House of Fright or Jekyll's Inferno.
Jekyll's Inferno is actually an interesting title, but we'll get to why that is. I don't think the title that it was in the UK, The Two Faces of Dr. Jeckyl, is very good. I think that Jekyll's Inferno is much more appropriate. But before we get into the plot, because the plot is fairly simple. If you know Dr. Jeckyl and Mr. Hyde, you know the plot. But I will say out of all the Dr. Jeckyl and Mr. Hyde movies I've seen, out of all of them, this might be the best that I've seen. Darlene, any statement?
No.
No statement. Okay.
Because I've seen slapstick comedy ones of this.
Yes.
And I can't even put that in.
No. I'm not saying, I'm not even comparing it to that. I'm comparing this like to other dramatic versions of this story.
Is this the first or last one that's been made of
This is not the last movie. This is from 1960. There's Dr. Jeckyl movies made in pretty much every 2 years of some sort or another. A little bit of background as well about the people that were involved in the making of this film and the actors and actresses before we get into the plot. The director is Terrence Fisher, and we have reviewed one of his films before, The Earth Dies Screaming. And we reviewed that for Earth vs. Soup. I forget which episode. Darlene can look at her notes after like a few minutes. It was fairly recently. And it was another excellent movie that I thought was really well done. It was very atmospheric. We both said that it was good. We both recommended it. It was in black and white. And what the actors and actresses in this, there's only one actor in this that you would likely recognize, and that's Christopher Lee, who does not play the lead. In fact, he had this part specifically written for him as a supporting character in the film. The two leads are Paul Massey as Dr. Jekyll. He also plays Mr. Hyde, and he does a very good job at distinguishing himself between the two parts. And then Dawn Adams as Kitty Jekyll, his wife. Darlene's looking at my notes for some reason. I don't know.
Well, what was the name of the other one?
The Earth Dies Screaming, Darlene.
The Earth Dies Screaming.
And I know we did it, so we can just move on. I was going to say Dawn Adams plays Kitty Jekyll. She was in quite a few television series. She was in The Saint. That's one place that you might recognize her from. But she didn't really do a ton of stuff that I recognize. But I think she did an excellent job in this movie. But let's get into the plot. And I'm going to...
Oh, that's episode 71.
Took you that long. 71. Okay. Well...
But you said it was bad.
No, I thought it was good. There was some really bad parts in it. But it was very atmospheric, and I recommended it because of its atmosphere. How creepy it was. I thought that the aliens were interestingly designed. I thought that the acting was bad, yes, but it was atmospheric. Now, to go over the plot of all Jekyll and Hyde movies, Dr. Jekyll is a scientist in all of these stories, and he either comes up with a chemical or a procedure of some sort that allows
the id to take over.
Yes, effectively the id, like his inner desires, his inner immoral self.
And this is the Victorian dual.
I wouldn't say dual personality. It's more of like it's more of like, hey, one person is civilized, the other person isn't. And this story has a twist to it, which is interesting. This is London, 1874. We're introduced to Dr. Jekyll as he is a bearded man who is soft.
By the way, that's bad makeup.
Yeah, well, yeah, his beard doesn't look right. But he is a... would you say he's soft-spoken?
Deep voice. But
very
soft,
deep voice, soft-spoken. He's actually... he allows, like, orphans that cannot speak, like mute orphans, to play in his garden. And he's been observing them for quite a long time. And he does this on the weekends. And he's seeing how there is communication without the use of words.
Through emotion.
Yeah, and he feels that there is a lot of communication just with emotion rather than words.
And he's taken the point of view that they have to, because they're mute.
Yes.
They are more needing to communicate through using emotion and have to use emotion because they're mute.
Well, and see, remember also, it's not just emotion. I think he specifically says that children must act out their dialogue rather than speak it or emote it even at times. That they have to act out. That's why you have the kids. There's like one kid that slaps flowers out of a girl's hand.
And she goes after him, and
yeah, it's kind of like a heightened emotional state, but it's not really that either. Okay. And he is doing these experiments to free the creature that is trapped within. This creature that is within all of us that tends to communicate through action, through play, through...
but more aggressively.
Yes. Okay. So we also learned that Jekyll was laughed out of his job, that other scientists even questioned his sanity. And he says, man has always known that his existence is a struggle between components. Man is two parts, the moral and the immoral. And this is the way, this is like a very large generalization of what he said in this scene. He ends up injecting, he has this like serum already, right? And he injects a monkey with the serum. And this normally like kind of chill monkey goes crazy and
And it
starts.
does it very quickly.
Yeah, it just goes from like 0 to 90 and starts like trying to tear its way out of the cage. We also find out he has a wife named Kitty, and that's again played by Dawn Adams, who I think did a very good job in this role. Their marriage is on the rocks, but since this is
Well, he spends a lot of his time in the lab.
he is a scientist that is consumed by discovery.
Obsessed.
He wishes to understand the human condition, and he is that's where all of his time goes. Okay. So Kitty is his wife. His marriage is on the rocks, and Kitty and what's his name? I always just wrote down Lee. Paul Allen, played by Christopher Lee. They're having an affair, and it's very openly an affair. And it's not really clear if Dr. Jeckyl actually knows that this affair is going on at the moment or not. I think he does. He just doesn't want to confront it. What are your thoughts, Darlene?
I think he knew
Okay.
because he kept on paying for his friend Paul Allen money.
He is cuckolded by he's extremely cuckolded because yes, he is actually paying for the man who is sleeping with his wife his debts.
And he's a gambler.
Yeah, these are all gambling debts. And so we see Kitty with Paul Allen. They're kissing, and they're very openly doing it. So we then kind of flash forward to that night when Kitty is going to go to a dinner party. She says she's going to a dinner party, and Jeckyl asks for Kitty to stay in so she can be antisocial and he can be social. That's how he describes it, because normally he's antisocial and she's the social butterfly. And she laughs him off. She refuses. Jeckyl goes back to his lab and injects himself with the drug. At this party, now we go to the party, we kind of follow where Kitty is gone. This is not really a party. And Darlene and I were discussing this because at first we thought this was, I don't even know how to describe it. It's a brothel. They're at a brothel in the end. I don't want to go through our whole like debate with like the pros and cons of each like stance that we took of where the hell they are in this.
It's a pleasure garden.
It's yes, but it is. I think its primary purpose is a brothel.
Yes.
Is it a high-end brothel? Yes. But why Kitty as a wife of a theoretically at least middle-class scientist?
No, he's upper class.
He's upper class because I mean they have a large home in London, right? Fine, he's upper class. Why she would be seen even with her lover
because
in public like that?
Well, in that place it would have the discretion. Where she told her husband she was going was Lady something or other's
Party.
Dinner party.
So this is also where we learned that that Jeckyl is being financially taken advantage of. And we go back, we see Jeckyl injects himself with the drug. Now, while he is Hyde, he no longer has facial hair. He's actually very well-spoken, very calm. We never really see, normally the Hyde character is manic or angry and shouting a lot, but this Hyde is different than most of the other portrayals. He's clean-shaven. He's very in control of himself. He is entirely immoral, but
Right.
he is incredibly in control of himself and restrained until he doesn't want to be restrained.
And he's wanting to find desires
Yes.
and fulfill his desires.
So Hyde ends up going to this brothel and is actually shocked to see his wife and his best friend there together macking on each other.
But they don't recognize him.
They don't recognize him because A, he doesn't have facial hair anymore, and B, he's holding himself in a completely different manner. This is the credit to the
and
actor.
His voice is totally different.
Yes, a credit to the actor. He is able to play the, with this without like anything besides fake facial hair when he's Jeckyl. He's able to completely change his demeanor, his presence.
The other one, Dr. Jeckyl doesn't smile, and this guy is constantly
smiling
with a devil smile. It's not even.
So Paul Allen just completely basks in his affair with Jekyll's wife in front of him as he's Hyde. And Hyde ends up dancing with this girl and talking to her pimp. He ends up, this pimp demands money for the dance, and Hyde beats the hell out of this pimp. Like, wrecks him. And Jeckyl starts regaining control at this point, so he runs back to the lab.
But his friend stops him.
Yeah, because he's like, oh my God, he's had enough. You're going to kill him. And I was like, oh, are we supposed to think that like Paul Allen is a decent human being here? I think it's trying to show that like even Paul Allen has freaking limits where as awful as a person as Paul Allen is, he has limits where Hyde doesn't at all. Jeckyl regains control back at the house, and then even later at that night, Kitty is in the bedroom. Jeckyl walks in and he says he needs her, like he wants to like regain this passion that he has for his wife, and she laughs him off, like just refuses to touch him. And he says, I wonder who you really are inside, and she doesn't really care what he's thinking at this point. By this point, we don't, even though Kitty has been clearly in a loveless marriage, the way that Kitty is acting towards him is both really disrespectful, and at this point it seems like she's actually more in the wrong than him for neglecting her, because she's reveling in her abuse to him. She seems to enjoy abusing him.
I don't know. I see it as her trying to get something back from all the neglect that he's done.
All the neglect, and I put that in giant air quotes because she has this beautiful house and all the clothes that she wants and all of her friends. I know, maybe he has been distant, and remember, he hasn't been distant the entire marriage. He's been distant the last few months. That's it.
I didn't get that.
Yes.
I thought it was like years.
No. She's awful. She's an awful human being.
Okay.
So we go to the next.
There isn't, by the way, anyone here that is not awful in this.
Yeah, including Jeckyl. Jeckyl is arguably a bad person for being neglectful of his wife, but that's like minor compared to the evils that everyone else has done.
And the only reason you can't say that his associate doctor friend that you see the first part off,
Dr. Latower,
you don't know whether he
seems to actually care about people. And remember, he's the one that's helping out the orphans as well.
Yeah, but you don't know his personality because he has very little show there.
Yes. Okay, so we go to the next night when Jeckyl is Hyde again, and he's hanging out with Paul Allen and hookers at this brothel.
Dressed like busboys?
You say busboys, I say a classic Arabian Nights motif.
Oh.
That's because, remember, it's supposed to be like, I don't know, middle 1800s. It's 1874, right?
Yeah,
England.
I commented about that with the dancer that's
so
there.
You have lots of cultural appropriation crap happening, which is normal at that time.
It's there, but it's just abused.
Yes. So they have like these hookers that they're hanging around with, and then a woman begins to do a burlesque dance with a python. And Darlene said this is where she thought that there was lots of problems with the British censors, because we had read that there was problems with British censors, And it turns out that, yes, that was the case because it was a little too suggestive with how she was grinding on the python. And then to be like indelicate about it, she deep throats the python at the end.
Yes.
Okay.
But
am I being too crude with that? Because that's exactly what it is.
One of the pictures, the first thing of her dance with the python, you got a crotch shot.
Okay, but we shouldn't. That's a little too much. There's a shot that, yes, let's not be more indelicate. There's she is framed in such a way as to show anatomy. Let's put it that way.
It doesn't show the anatomy. It just it's right.
Yeah. Okay, anyway. We end up having Hyde really, really desire her because she's clearly attractive. He is attracted to her sexuality.
No, he's attracted that she's something that is not available and wants to see if he is available, if he can make her available.
So Hyde ends up going to this woman's room at the club. And as far as I can tell,
uninvited,
the featured dancers here have their actual rooms where they entertain wealthy guests. He's very confident and basically convinces her to sleep with him in so many words. And then when he's done, he tosses her away and returns home to speak with his wife as Hyde. So at this point, Hyde proposes an affair to his own wife, but she admits to loving Paul Allen, who's Christopher Lee. Hyde freaks out, runs out of the room, and begins to change back. And then we go to the next day where his friend, the doctor, is examining him and says, Jekyll's life is burning himself out. Like he's aging quicker because of all the energy, like this extra being inside of him is pulling out.
And you see it slowly. They actually start aging, not Hyde, but Dr. Jeckyl.
Yeah, Jeckyl ends up aging where Hyde doesn't. Hyde ends up, this next night, Hyde goes to the gentleman's club, the brothel, where he takes over Paul Allen's debt in exchange for getting into London's seedy underbelly. Because he's like, I want to experience. I am a virgin to London, and London is a virgin to me. I wish to get to know her. He's really eating it up. And Lee's like, I can do that. Paul Allen's, I can do that for you, sure. And you'll take on my debt, okay. And this begins where like they show Hyde going to bar fights, fight clubs, really crappy bars, opium dens. He's like really getting every STD possible. It's pretty clear during this time that Hyde is digging Paul Allen's grave by basically just saying, of course, I will fund all of your debt. Just keep gambling. That's fine. Because he keeps racking up more and more and more debt.
Well, he said he'd fund him $5,000.
And he went through that in like a day.
He went through that at one gambling table.
Yeah. So we end up having Hyde trying to convince his wife to leave Paul Allen. She doesn't. Then he ends up coming up with this plan, and I'm trying to sum it up, where he basically decides to, as Hyde, tell his wife that it's okay for her to leave him as Jeckyl. Okay, like she's like, I'm going to leave. I will come up. Your husband Jeckyl will come up with a suitable arrangement to give you money to leave him alone in peace, etc., etc.
If we
meet at this place, and it's actually the brothel, but we're going to have this meeting in the brothel at this dining room in this private room where this one woman that was the snake dancer is. Now, this is kind of crazy. Hyde convinces the snake dancing woman to go back to his home. Now, he ends up sleeping with her there in his own marriage bed to Kitty, with her wearing Kitty's lingerie.
That was after the
I know I'm putting things a little bit out
after
of order.
killing
Yeah, it's Darlene spoils it now. Yes, I am doing things out of order. He does this, but at the same time, effectively, he is able to convince Paul Allen and Kitty to go to this club where he brings Paul Allen into the room first. Correct? Yes.
Yes.
Because the snake from the snake girl is in the bathroom and it kills Paul Allen. He like seals him into the room. And then Hyde brings up Kitty, who he explains, "Oh, look, I have ruined him and I will have you now because you're the only thing that I can't have, seemingly, but I will." And Hyde rapes her. Correct, Darlene? Like, that's not...
I don't know. I don't know whether he did that or whether he just tore the dress. And she's dressed as a widow.
Yes, because she's in mourning. But to me, the implication was that he raped her.
That's questionable.
Okay. She has a torn dress. She has claw marks all over her. And this is where Hyde leaves. He leaves her in this room where
dressed
in her lingerie.
In the woman that...
No, that was the lingerie that she was wearing underneath her dress. Because she was going to sleep with Paul Allen that night, Darlene.
Oh, I didn't get that. I thought it was that he actually put her into a...
No. That's Kitty's lingerie. And she finally figures out that she's a ruined woman because she found Paul Allen's body. She understands that she's been taken advantage of by Hyde, and that her husband knows all about the affair, and that effectively her life is at an end because she's kind of dug her own grave in that way. Yes, Hyde abused her, but she's the one that decided to have this awful affair and kind of revel in it as well. So she throws herself off the balcony of this bedroom through the glass roof of the brothel.
Onto the dancing floor.
Onto the dance floor.
Where the can-cans are still dancing? Or...
Yeah, there was this great scene with can-can dancers, and she dies. So we have the police investigating. This is right at the end of the movie. Hyde is able to basically fake Jekyll's death in a lab fire. And at the coroner's inquest, the coroner finally finds that Jeckyl committed suicide through self-immolation, but Jeckyl is able to regain control over Hyde for a moment and change back in front of like everybody there.
Without the serum.
And Jeckyl basically looks old, decrepit, and the cops arrest him for the murder of Paul Allen and Kitty. And I don't know if did he murder the snake girl? Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, he did. He strangles her. That's right. So
after,
that body was also found at the home.
Yes. And there's like this hearing where post-mortem
That's what I was saying. That's the coroner's inquest where they say Jeckyl committed suicide by self-immolation, and then Hyde changes back into Jeckyl, and Jekyll's like, well, Hyde was like, "You're going to kill us both." And he's like, "Yes, for good reason, because you're a monster." Blah, 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 blah. And I'm the monster. So.
And at the very end, you have everybody just staring at this dead corpse of Dr. Jeckyl.
He's not dead. They arrest him. Because the investigator comes in and walks up to him and says, "Dr. Jeckyl, you're under arrest."
Oh, because I thought he was...
No. That's the end. So I really went through a lot of this plot kind of quickly, but what worked in this movie to you, Darlene? I'll let you start it.
You always let me start it. I think the settings were
Set pieces.
Set
Well, the
pieces.
sets or the set pieces?
Both, because I was watching a lot of stuff like, here's these two cops in this prostitute place, and I'm like,
The brothel?
the brothel, and right behind them is a statue with what you see is a naked statue.
Well, yeah, it's a bronze. It's supposed to be like a bronze statue of a naked woman, like holding up the arch of this pillar. Like it's, but her like the nipples are
her
blushing.
the belly button and the nipples are pink, and I don't know if that's the film,
But they're not like painted pink. It to me, and I said it looks like the hookers were kissing the nipples or something because it looks like lipstick. That's what like. There's little details in this movie that you're like, ooh, that's ew, or wow, that's really good attention to detail. Like I loved in that same scene, I loved the madam of this brothel. She has short hair and
she's dressed male.
She's dressed as a male with a red smoking jacket, and her nose is in the air, and she does not.
And she's got what do they call
a monocle?
Monocle.
And the cops don't even know how to handle her because this is 1874 England. They're like, whoa.
And she goes, "Can I buy?"
Yeah, a consideration in this matter, like to keep our name out of it. And they're like, no, we cannot have a consideration for this matter. And she looks at them, and they look at her, and they nod slightly. Yeah, okay, I get it. And they walked out. Okay, great detail. Like just the little details in this movie are fantastic. But yeah, all the sets look great. Like even Jekyll's lab looks great. I love the bedroom sets that they have in this. They're just like luxurious. What works for me the most in this movie, though, honest to God, are the costumes. Because every single female costume in this is interesting in some way, shape, or form. Even like the kind of smutty ones, like, hey, when Kitty is right at the end in that lingerie, it's like this red and black lace lingerie that doesn't show anything, but it is incredibly detailed and intricate and wonderful. Whenever she's in a dress, it looks great.
What about
suits,
the muggers?
They look suitably trashy. Like they're good costumes.
And there was this one on those muggers. I was like, is that a guy or a female?
Oh yeah, is it somebody cross-dressing and pretending to be a woman? Like, yeah, it could have been. It could have been a drag queen, but it wasn't. It was just they ended up doing the makeup on this woman to make her look like she wasn't. She was like really, really drunk when she put her makeup on, and so it made her look like she had a more angular face. Rather than, the softer. Anyway, lots of little details in this movie that actually worked. The colors are vibrant in this movie. All the lighting in the brothel is just really interesting. What else worked? What else do you think worked?
I liked how there was a contradiction to the niceness of his house to the lab was done in a stable.
Well, yes.
Or a warehouse or something like that. Because you even have where you see the wall is not even
fully finished.
It's like,
well, like the door was still a stable door that you had to like duck out of because it would only open like halfway, and the latch was locked on the top.
And they had the small door to it too.
That's what he had to go out. No, there's a lot of duality in this movie that they purposely put in because, again, we have Paul Allen being the douchebag, but he's the one that stops Hyde from killing the guy. Like, where Hyde is completely immoral. You have the beauty of the house versus this kind of...
And the beauty of his wife.
But she is a completely evil person.
And she's a completely immoral, too.
Yeah. But she's the one that, like, takes care of the house, so it's pretty. It's pretty. And yet you have Jeckyl, who exists out in his stable laboratories, and it's shabby and unkempt.
I wouldn't say it was unkept.
Well, it's shabby. It's not
it's
clean.
Shabby.
But I also think that's part of the reason why they decided to have Jeckyl as like the bearded guy, that he just doesn't care about his appearance. It's all about the science. And then you have Hyde, who is all about him, the pleasure, being existing in the now, that kind of thing. And that's why Hyde is clean shaven and very well spoken.
Very gentlemanlike,
Oh,
because that's what
yes.
the brothel madame said too.
Oh yeah, he's such a gentleman. Yeah, like, yeah, I don't know.
And what about this Dr. Jekyll? Never saw him
Yeah,
whatsoever.
I've never seen that man. Yeah, because he hasn't ever been there really. Did anything not work in this movie? Honestly,
His makeup.
the beard makeup
Because
didn't look right.
When you the first part of it, it looked like it was something of his, and it looked like they might have shaved it for another part, and then there was sometimes that you could actually see that it was.
No, it was always fake.
It was always fake.
It was always fake.
Because the first time you see him, it actually looks neat and cleaned.
It might have been just they started filming and it looks fine, and they started, as the movie shooting went on, it got shabby.
And then it looked like wax was on his face.
But that was from him sweating when he was like changing back and forth, like Jeckyl regaining control made him sweat.
Yes, I knew that. That's something else that was a detail, but no, the makeup didn't look right as it went along.
See, I would say if this was like they probably could have done better with it if they just had him grow like a natural beard and shoot all the shots they needed with him as Jeckyl first, and then going to Hyde.
But they also had the eyebrows.
Yeah, they had the eyebrows, which they trimmed down as well. And okay, they probably just didn't want to spend the money on really good makeup. I mean, the budget on this was pretty high. We should remark on that. I did calculate it. It was
£146,417.
Okay, but in today's dollars, in 2022's dollars, it's about $5 million budget.
And Hammer lost £30,000.
And I don't know how much that is in today's. But anyway, is this a $5 million movie? It sure as hell looks like it. It honestly does. And you have the heavy hitter Christopher Lee in like a supporting role in this. Does he do a good job? Absolutely. But everybody does. I think everybody does. Just even like the background characters, like the prostitutes, are really good because the way they look at each other when like Hyde is staring at lust with the snake dancing woman, and they just kind of are like, oh my god, we've just lost money for tonight, like, and they're looking at each other with like a little bit of disgust and then envy towards the woman, but they're all doing it kind of in the background. Like, hey, good job, that's good direction. That's probably coming from the director, like, hey girls, give me this look.
And some of them put on odd accents.
Yeah, I don't know, all the actors are good in this. All of them.
Maria, which is the stake dancer, they made her look like she was Asian,
but I don't think she was. She's only been in 2 other movies, in 2 movies total, including this one, so it's not like she has a big repertoire for me to figure out whatever. But I think it was just makeup. Regardless, like I said, the madam for the brothel, freaking fantastic. She's in one scene for like a minute and a half, and she steals the show. Like, I'm down with seeing a whole movie about this brothel madam in her smoking jacket and monocle, just lording it over freaking police inspectors, trying to make deals with like the authorities while she has like women deep throating pythons in the background. I mean, holy crap, this is 1960. So, I mean, this felt like it was actually pretty on the edge in some ways.
And I think it was for that.
But it was really good. Like, this is another one of these Hammer films where it's like, I'm glad we're watching these because I'm really taken in by these movies. I'm really taken in. the quality of these movies are fantastic. The direction, the writing, the acting, the post-production, all of that stuff, fantastic. Set design, you just keep marking off. Is this a recommendation, Darlene?
I think so. I really enjoyed it, but like I said, I don't know. I guess you would consider it science fiction because it's science that changed him, and it is pseudoscience of psychology.
Oh, psychology pseudoscience? Well,
That's
no,
what you call it.
no. I call chiropractic pseudoscience.
Okay.
There's
But
a difference, Darlene.
It's a social science.
It's a social science, not
okay.
pseudoscience.
Social science, and because it's not based in, based in observation.
Yes. And behavior is a little different than a retestable physical constant or something like that, because it's different with everybody, with different people. That's the point.
And
it's a chemical that changes him. It's science fiction. It's not horror, it's science fiction. Is Frankenstein science fiction or horror, Darlene?
Science fiction. But
say that louder. Say it louder.
It's science fiction with a horror element.
Sure, but most good science fiction has elements from other genres in it to help tell the story. Is most science fiction the subgenre drama? Yeah, most of the time it is. Sometimes it's horror, because you get movies such as Alien, where the subgenre is horror.
I guess this one had mystery, horror, and drama in it.
Yeah, I'm not saying science fiction is the primary element of this by any means, but it is in our genre. And that's why I'm saying that horror in this time frame, in our time frame that we look at, it is in Earth versus Soup. It is in this, because in a lot of ways you can say that The Thing is horror, because if you didn't know it was an alien that had come to Earth, that it was some sort of like Yeti out on the ice cap, you'd be like, oh, this is a horror movie. This doesn't fit in our genre, but it's the exact same movie. You've just said now it's a Yeti rather than a alien. So we're going to push our genre, though, for the next review. We are recommending this. I don't know if there's something that a modern filmmaker can take away besides, my God, work on your sets, make your sets believable and interesting, and put fun little details into it. That you don't need to crowd your shot with details, but make sure that what you have there looks good. Or
also,
looks correct.
your secondary characters need to be just a little, because they did a great job on, like, even your madame, or like that one prostitute that was that went with Hyde in that thing, and she's slumped over, bored.
Yeah.
You know, there's emotion muting, she's not just emoting. It's not just a set dressing.
Yeah, that she's there actually acting as well. Like all the actors and actresses in this film did a fantastic job.
Even the drunk on the drunk.
Yeah,
that
absolutely. That Hyde almost kills. Absolutely. But like I said, we're going to push our purview in this show a little far for the next episode. But I've been talking about this with you
in our time lines.
Yeah, I have been talking with Darlene for a long time to actually talk about this movie. And I feel that it's important for Earth versus Soup to actually talk about movies that are important to the genre. And so we are going to do 1979's Stalker. Yes, 79. It's pretty far forward, and this is kind of a unique movie, and that's why we're going to do it. It is a Soviet movie. It is based on one of my favorite science fiction novels, and that's part of the reason, again, that we're going to do it, because the novel is from an earlier period, and it's actually called Roadside Picnic. It's based on Roadside Picnic. A lot of people out there may actually recognize the video games that were also based on this, called Stalker. The two, like the multiple games that were made in Ukraine and Russia called Stalker, that deal with the exclusion zone around Chernobyl.
It's where the words come from, is this movie.
Yes, absolutely. So
And
this is there are lots of details in this film that we're
I
going to
think
talk about.
you'd really want to watch this before you hear us
Yes.
talk about it.
So please,
I-
before the next episode, I will tell you that this is on the Criterion Collection. Stalker's on the Criterion Collection. Please watch this movie before you hear
We
us talk
both
about
recommend this movie.
Yeah.
That we're going to be talking about next time.
Absolutely. And it is a long movie. It's almost 3 hours long. I know that will turn some people off, but it's a slow burn movie for a reason. It's there. It gives you time to think. And again, this is rare even for the 1950s. It's incredibly rare today, but this movie attempts to tell a story through both plot and feeling. So please watch it before our review. If you think it's too much of a time investment or whatever, or you can't find a copy for whatever reason, totally understand. Go ahead and listen to our next episode too. Yeah, I won't tell you to not to. So, Stalker from 1979 for next time. I'm Aaron.
I'm Darlene. Good evening.
And keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.